Hi, this is Rick Baptist, and you are listening to The Other Side of the Bell.
Hello, and welcome to The Other Side of the Bell, a podcast dedicated to everything trumpet, brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass. We'll help you take your trumpet playing to the next level. I'm John Snell, trumpet specialist here at Bob Reeves Brass, and I'll be your host for this episode. My special guest today is trumpeter Mike Price. We'll get to Mike's interview here in a moment after a word from our sponsor and some trumpet news. Today's episode is brought to you by Bob Reeves Brass, who share your passion for creating extraordinary music. You know that feeling when your instrument just clicks and the music flows effortlessly? That's what Bob Reeves Brass has been helping customers do since 1968. We've helped brass musicians like you achieve their dreams by ensuring their equipment is always in perfect harmony. We know you want to immerse yourself in the art of music making, and we're here to remove any barriers between you and your creative vision. At Bob Reeves Brass, we work closely with you to understand your unique needs and provide tailored solutions like valve alignments, custom-fit mouthpieces from our extensive stock models or a hand-carved custom mouthpiece, gap adjustments with the Reeves sleeve system, or even tweaking your existing gear. No matter your level of experience, we offer free consultations and serve musicians from all walks of life. And if you're looking for the perfect instrument to inspire your next musical masterpiece, we proudly carry the exquisite Van Laar line of trumpets and flugelhorns, as well as the superb Charlie Davis line of trumpets. What's more, Bob Reeves Brass is taking their commitment to your musical journey even further. We're now offering a carefully curated collection of top-notch products designed specifically for brass musicians. You'll find premium guard bags to protect your beloved instruments, a diverse range of mutes from renowned brands like Ulvain mutes, Yupon and Okura mutes from Japan, Trumcore mutes, Rayano, Clary Wood mutes, and Charlie Davis mutes, ensuring you have the perfect mute for every performance. But that's not all. We've also got you covered when it comes to essential maintenance supplies, with a hand-picked selection of valve oils, lubricants, and more to keep your instruments in tip-top shape. Bob Reeves Brass is truly your one-stop shop for everything you need to fuel your passion and create music that touches hearts and souls. So go ahead, let us help you elevate your sound to new heights. Don't wait another moment to elevate your musical journey with Bob Reeves Brass. Connect with us at bobreeves.com, shoot us an email at info@bobreeves.com, and keep up with the latest news on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Bob Reeves Brass. Embrace your passion for music and let Bob Reeves Brass be your partner in creating the extraordinary. Well, I'd love to give a special shout out to all the new listeners that we've gotten over the last month or two. We've had a great summer full of episodes, and if you haven't listened to some of the previous episodes, Bill Bing and Marisa Benedict and Courtney Jones. We've had a lot of great episodes, a lot of great content, and all for free. So feel free to go back wherever you listen on Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever, and pick up some of those podcasts if you haven't listened to them already. Short bit of news that I have this time is our pop-up shop that I've mentioned before at Virtuosity Musical Instruments in Boston, Massachusetts. I will be there in person October 6th and 7th for mouthpiece consultations and in-person valve alignments. So if you're in New England and you've thought about getting your horn measured or sending your horn out to us, you can save a ton of time and a ton of money by just visiting us at Virtuosity. Steve Johnson over there is hosting us, a wonderful, wonderful guy and trumpet player himself. And we're proud to have them now as a Bob Reeves Brass dealer. So to kick things off, we will have over 300 mouthpieces in stock there. Again, I will be on hand to help you sort through them and to find what would work best for you. So a personal mouthpiece fitting and, of course, some good hang time as well. So again, the dates for that, October 6th and 7th. We are doing things by appointment only because our time is so limited. So head on over to Virtuosity's website, or we'll have the link where you can schedule your appointment or consultation right in the description here of this podcast, and we hope to see you there. The other quick thing I wanted to mention is our shipment from Guard Bags has finally arrived. It's taken about a year, and thankful to have them. So if you are interested in a Guard case, we do have some stock left. It's amazing. We took pre-orders, and some of the styles already sold out before they even arrived here in Los Angeles, but we do still have some left. So if you're interested, particularly in the Guard triple bags, we do have a number of those. Head on over to trumpetmouthpiece.com, look for Guard Bags on the homepage, or search for Guard, G-A-R-D, and you can see exactly what we have in stock. They're a hot commodity. And if you don't see what you like there, just let me know, and we'll get the case you're interested in on our next order, which should be arriving early next year. All right, that's all for my news today. Let's get right to my interview with Mike Price. Oh, my special guest today has traveled a fascinating musical journey from Chicago to Tokyo to Los Angeles, Mike Price. Mike was trained at Northwestern University and the Berklee School of Music, and he's played with renowned bands led by Stan Kenton and Buddy Rich, where he played lead trumpet. In the 1970s, he joined the Toshiko Akiyoshi Lew Tabackin Big Band and later established his own presence in Tokyo with the Mike Price Jazz Quintet and the Mike Price Orchestra. He has paid homage to jazz greats like Duke Ellington and collaborated with Detroit jazz singer Harvey Thompson. After spending years in Japan, Mike is now back in Los Angeles, sharing his music with a new audience. Let's listen to a clip from the tune Tutu's Birds of Passage on the album Presenting the Mike Price Jazz Quintet in Tokyo, Japan. And now, here's my interview with Mike Price. Joining me today in the Bob Reeves Brass Podcast Studio is Mike Price. Mike, it's an honor to have you here today.
How do you, John? Good to see you. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been coming to the shop how many years?
Since 1968.
Wow.
That was the year that Bob opened up.
Day one. Day one.
And I dearly miss him because he was such a great help all throughout the years through my various winding projects, mouthpiece ideas, and he would listen to them all patiently, and he came up with some solutions for me and pointed as the years developed, and it was so helpful to me.
And we'll get into all of those projects during our conversation today. But I'd like to go to right when you started playing the trumpet. What did that look like? How did that happen?
Well, that was a very good music program in Florida. And what the junior high band director did is he brought around about 20 of his best musicians, and they were doing concerts at the various elementary schools for recruiting his summer band program. It started in June, went through July, and only cost $1 to join. And then he had an arrangement with the music store, all wired up, so I could rent a cornet for the summer for $15. Yeah. And those were days were.
It's a good deal.
Yeah, it was great. But at any rate, what happened during that concert where he demonstrated the various instruments is everything was fine and it's just fine. But when he had a little Dixieland combo come down in front and play a Muscat Ramble, that got my attention.
That perked your ears up.
That when I heard the middle chorus going ba 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 ba, the syncopation. Hey, this is it.
That was it.
Yeah.
Wow. So how old were you then? You said it was
12.
12. Yeah. Wow. Did you have anyone musical in your family, or was it you were the first?
Well,
one?
I had a great aunt who was pretty good at ragtime piano, and her kids, one of her kids played alto saxophone. It was my mom's generation. Yeah, and then there were some others too. Another great uncle who played violin in his youth, but nobody professionally. However, there in the extended family there were some music teachers.
So, 12-year-old Mike Price learning the cornet. What did that look like? Did you have private lessons? Did you just learn in the band program?
We had every day we had a band class, except for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday was just a brass specialist thing. All the brass players got together, and we got more specific exercises of just learning how to slur between the overtone series and in the basic low register area.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good training, and I enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah. So you really took. Now, did you always play cornet, or did you switch over to the trumpet at some point?
Well, in high school,
yeah,
I played that cornet. It was a Cleveland cornet, one of the student model of the King Company.
Mm-hmm.
Very good cornet.
Yeah. And then, so get into high school, you switched to trumpet. Was there any point where, like, the light turned on and you thought, hey, I could do this for the rest of my life? Or was it kind of thing that you just did for fun?
Well, I'm not sure exactly when that point was, but as it developed in high school, it was sometime around between the junior year, I suppose, that I was leaning very heavily that way, and I decided to major in music in college and so forth. But music was always a strong part of everything that I did in high school. We had a dance band, we called it, and we were even able to work with the vicinity.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys had a working band in high school, basically?
Yeah.
Wow.
We didn't get paid very much money, but we had some gigs, and some local people would hire us, and we had a meeting one time. How are we going to get work? And we drew had a map there, and we said, we'll send to all these places, and we got some responses.
Wow! So already the musician's mindset at a young age.
I was in the union at 16.
Jeez! Yeah. And this was down in Florida still?
No, this was in Valparaiso, Indiana.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You moved up there at some point
after 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in high school. The last year of middle school and high school in Indiana.
In Indiana.
It's my grandparents' hometown.
Oh, nice. So did you have any, I know I asked you if you had any private instructors. Did you have any private instruction before you got to college? Or was
hit and miss. And miss. It was, I had one guy in 8th grade for a little while, and then I took lessons from a trombone player. I worked weekends at the local music store, cleaning washing the pianos and doing all the menial stuff, and so I did that for weekends for 3 years. So I saw all the local people who were musicians and band directors. I met them too. Mm-hmm. It was a good environment.
So you were around it, but basically so self-taught up at least through college.
Well, I had a trombone teacher, and then I took from the local Valparaiso University band director. Norm Hannawald was a trumpet player, so he gave me some lessons, during my senior year.
Okay, so you had some direction at least.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So then it comes time to go to university. How did you make the decision about where to go, and where did you end up going?
Well, I wasn't sure. I have to credit my mom for directing me more in a good way, because I was thinking, with the Indiana schools, my band director, who was a trumpet player, went to Ball State, and eventually it was a teacher's college. Mm-hmm. And my mom had a better sense of what was going on. She set up an audition at Northwestern. And I didn't know. Let's go. We're going to audition.
So she set that up for you.
Yeah, she called and arranged for it. It was on one Saturday in my senior year, somewhere around probably January or so. We went up there, and I played for John Painter, the band director. Mm-hmm. I had played La Virgen de la Macarena during my senior year for the solo contest and that. So I played that for him, and he was impressed. And fortunately my warning to all high school students: get good grades. And so I was able to, my scholastic scores were high enough that I could get a scholarship.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That comes in handy.
Yes.
It comes in, especially this day and age, but I'm sure back then as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you end up at Northwestern. Now, I mean, the history at that school, and I mean, obviously just brass playing around the Chicago area in general. I mean, were you familiar with Chicago and the CSO and all that?
No, but I had been able to hear some good brass playing. I was working with a band during my senior year. I was working with a band from Hammond, Indiana, which was a different local, and we played frequently at Midway Ballroom in Cedar Lake, Indiana, which was a Monday night stop for most of the big bands. And the owner would let myself and another trumpet player who's in the same band, high school student like me, and we always make a beeline down there on Monday nights during the summer, and to hear the big bands. And so we got an idea what big band playing sounds like.
You're already getting that in your ear. And,
yeah. And so when I let's say moving forward to when I got to Northwestern, I didn't know a lot about classical music in depth, So, however, there was a serendipity moment in that Vince Cichowicz started teaching Northwestern when my freshman year.
Oh, really?
I arrived.
Wow.
So, and the previous guy was apparently played theater, the shows which came into town. So this was more in depth, and he was, of course, a principal proponent of what I call the Chicago School of playing. The Arnold Jacobs, Herseth, Cichowicz, Rudy Nashin, and all the players who came up in that tradition. And I was fortunate enough to be studying with Vince. He was only about 36 when he started teaching.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow. So what? I mean, do you remember your first lesson with him, or
yes?
What was that like?
Don't puff out your cheeks. Yeah, that was the first thing. So I came back next week and I had it fixed, and he was, and we got off to a very good start.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff? I mean, did he kind of back up a second? You had a lot of interest in big band and jazz. It sounded like growing up. So, I mean, did he? Was it primarily classical stuff that he would work with you on, or was it just?
It's just basic
fundamentals, pedagogy.
Yeah. And it was the Arbins and Herbert L. Clark, and he had a routine, very good routine, and that's what I did, and I just, I worshipped him. So basically, and just did exactly what he said every week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any interest in doing classical stuff after studying?
Well,
with him,
it developed. It developed.
Yeah.
It did develop, and because it was there all the time. We had a jazz workshop band which just met one night a week, one couple times a week. Well, when we got the evening rehearsal time, it was one night, but during my freshman year, it was a noon hour rehearsal, lunchtime. So, let's say, gradually, I got, of course, we did the etudes, and I was in the orchestra and in the concert band both, and of course I was getting exposed to it, and I had to play the Haydn trumpet concerto. I was introduced to that, and the usual, working on the Hindemith, and then by my senior year, things were going pretty good in the classical area, and we did a Stravinsky project for the music school, and played the Histoire de Soldat.
Wow.
So that was when I was a senior, and much later on, advancing a number of years, and when I was in Japan, the teachers at this one international school, we got together and had a Stravinsky rehearsal band. We worked on and performed History of the Soldier. So I got to do it.
You got to do it twice.
I got to do it twice, which is really great.
And that you can't fake your way through that one. That's there's no place to hide.
No.
Wow, what an experience. So being in Chicago, I mean, were you able to pick anything else up from the brass greats that were there? I mean, you mentioned Arnold Jacobs, and obviously Brett Herseth's in town.
Well, on the other side, there was an excellent lead trumpet player, Johnny Howell, and he and a number of other guys. But he was probably brought the biggest resume to Chicago He was originally from the South, and well, he was I think a B-17 pilot during the war.
Jeez.
He was kind of straight ahead, kind of a character, and quite a character actually. But he was an excellent player, and so fortunately, Chicago wasn't such a big city that the musical community was small enough that I could get to know some of the people who were several levels higher than I, and there were rehearsal bands. So I would meet these older players in rehearsal bands, and and absorb as much as I can.
Wow.
And then when I was a sophomore, well, actually, one of the rehearsal band drummers was Don Osborne, who later became a president of Slingerland. And at any rate, he helped me. He recommended me to a local dance band that worked on Saturday nights at one of the ballrooms. There were about 4 or 5 active ballrooms in Chicago those years, and so I was able to do a gig on every Saturday night. Just a dance band playing Glenn Miller and Count Basie arrangements.
What fun!
And working with older players.
Yeah,
that was the key. And they kept me in grilled cheese sandwiches for a while.
So you're studying with Cichowicz at the school, but then you're also still working, actually kind of continuing the work you were doing in high school with working in dance bands and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And then later on, I went from other bands and worked with one leader who subcontracted for, sometimes when leaders from either coast would come to Chicago, bring maybe a few players and then supplement with Chicago players. And it was basically a sight reading gig. And I did that for a while too.
Really?
So I was a senior.
It's got to sit in with some pretty good bands.
Les Elgart. Les Elgart was one. Also, but Les actually took up residence in Chicago for a while. But Larry Elgart, Les Elgart, I even did with one gig with Skitch Henderson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Warren Covington, and leaders, Richard Maltby one time too. And so there was that kind of work in Chicago because it was a position.
Yeah.
Geographically.
Yeah. Well, so you finished your undergrad. Did you go on to graduate school at that point? Or?
I started grad school, and I got tired of it because I wanted to be learning more about jazz, and specifically, and there was no coursework in jazz. It was good coursework. I took orchestration and as much classical writing courses as I could, although there wasn't much room for that while I was working on a music ed degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had to squeeze in.
Which is what I got, and so So what I did, I had a couple of job offers, and I left Northwestern, but not before meeting Bob Scherer at the Notre Dame Jazz Festival in 1964. And they were expanding Berklee, and they were looking for some people. So I was able to. Sequence. The first thing that happened, I confirmed an assistantship at that Notre Dame Jazz Festival. But during spring break that year, 64, I was thinking, Maynard Ferguson's tune, "Go East, Young Man." Go East, Young Man.
That was playing in your head?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
And so, New York, I didn't see a chance, but Berklee School of Music, that seemed to be real impressive, in East Coast, real East Coast perspective. And so during spring break, I went up to Boston, and I met with Scherer, and told him who I was and everything, what I was trying to do, and I saw him again a few weeks later at the Notre Dame Festival. He was one of the judges. I talked to him. He spoke. You're please come to Boston, and you'd be the TA.
Nice. So you ended up out there
for 3 years.
3 years at Berklee.
Yeah.
Wow. So were you also taking lessons, studying out there as well?
I had lessons with Ray Katwika.
Uh-huh.
And Ray, I learned some things from Ray. Ray was had some things, but he wasn't not a Chicago style player.
Yeah.
So we talked about this and that and other thing, and it was and Ray was thinking, well, I got to find something that he just got,
Mm-hmm.
and he did. He did. He was a kind of a very meticulous kind of guy. But it kind of drove me nuts because I start playing, blah, 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 stop! You've got to do this and do that. He said, Ray, okay, I'll do it. But anyway, his concept of fingering, teaching fingering, which is something that Vince didn't talk that much about specifically. But he found, but Ray had a way of really getting into that.
How so? What would he? Something specific about
simple,
it? Or?
Just don't raise the fingers way off the keyboard, off your pistons.
Keep them close.
And practically imagine them being glued.
Interesting. Interesting.
So to get that down, you really you got to do your chromatic exercises or whatever you're playing.
Yeah.
Very slowly.
Yeah.
And so this will give you a faster technique. Of course, you work on the speed. As you get it together, you gradually build up the speed. But he was very good in that aspect. So I did. Yes, I did.
3 years with him.
In the last year, 2 years. In the last year, I studied with John Coffey, who was retired trombonist from the BSO.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What did you learn from him?
Well, at that point in time, he was pretty much retired, and we just talked about playing. I don't remember any very specific things because our lessons were. I had to go across town to meet him and meet his schedule, and by that time I was working in Boston quite a bit. Especially in the last year.
So it's more like playing together and
I was
communal kind of
I was
thing.
working at a place called Blindstrom's, which was a old time supper club with shows. Like we played for Al Martino, Jack Jones, Peggy Lee, and the people who were touring around.
Yeah,
doing 1 week stops or 10-day stops. Jimmy Durante.
Oh, what fun!
Yeah.
You remember doing shows with him?
Oh yeah.
What was he like?
Well, I have a story for you.
All right.
In Chicago, I went with the band that I was working with, who contracted for various leaders coming to town. He had his own band, Dominic Geraci, his name, and we were working at the Erie Crown Theater, Mohammed Place, on the lakefront, and it was like a big room. It was probably a convention performance, and it was set up like a boxing ring stage in the center, so everybody was sitting around it, and the band is off to the side, looking at the stage, and Durante had this vaudeville style, like rat-a-ta-ta-ta-ta, 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 like that, and going on and on. It was like a constant flow of music during his act, and they would say, he would raise his hand, and they would stop and tell a joke, like that. And this went on. So in the band, we had 3 trumpets, and John Howell was playing first. I was playing second, and another guy, Hank Mitchell, was playing third. And of course, everybody knew the routine; they were ready for it. And so I'm playing along like this, and John would play, and then he would point to the music, and then Hank Mitchell would leave his part and jump in and cover the lead, so he rests his chops. So this went on like quite a while like that, and so of course I didn't have anybody to spell me. But I was like grade 22 or so, and I had to play. It was my responsibility to cover this part, and by God, I'm going to do it. And so on and on and on and on like this. It went. And finally, I'm just like, I pull the horn down from my face and have a big sigh like that. And right then, Jimmy Durante looks at me from the stage and says, "Stop the music. That trumpet player has only got one lip." This is my first time. I was so embarrassed.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Everyone else gets to spell. Yeah.
I didn't know the routine.
Yeah.
This is one of Durante's bits that he uses.
Yeah.
But it was the first time for me I ever heard it, and I thought I was being singled out.
I love it. Oh my God. You were 22?
Yeah, right.
This trumpet player has one lip.
Stop the music. And I must have turned 3 shades of red. So
I'm going to use that joke now. That's a good one. That trumpet player, he's got one lip.
Yeah, stop the music.
Well, you can. I mean, how many players can you say were the butt of a Jimmy Durante joke? But the timing is perfect when you were actually holding on for dear life.
It was a cue. He may have always skipped it. I had the band for the opportunity for that. But,
he probably knew.
Oh yeah, he was old. Yeah. I mean, he was a vaudevillian.
Yeah, so. It's a lost art, man.
So at any rate,
what a great story. I had a lot of classical teaching. It sounds like through your college, but a lot of the work you were doing is in dance bands and things like that.
Yeah. So that was my tendency. That was my we'll say affinity.
Yeah.
Toward jazz and swing and.
Were you working on improv at the time as well?
Somewhat. I was mostly concentrating on lead trumpet playing.
Okay. And what would you do? Was that self-taught, or is that stuff you would get? I mean, you mentioned Johnny Howell, but
just sitting next to players like that.
Uh-huh.
And there's a number of good older lead trumpet players in Chicago, and basically learn from them, of course, listen to recordings too. Like some of the great New York players, like Bernie Glow, for example. That's a pretty good example.
Paint that sound in your man.
His playing on the Miles Gil Evans recordings are just so fantastic. So I had that in mind more than of course I knew about and heard Goslo's playing too on records as well, and there's but I didn't know about some of the other players like I met Brad Brisbois. I heard him when he was on Stan Kenton's band, but I'm thinking about Euan Racy and Copy Lewis and players like that. I didn't know about them.
The guys out here
until they got to LA.
Yeah. So listening, just absorbing, but then also on the job, right? Just the players the different players who are coming through town, and you would be on pickup bands and whatnot. You'd learn from them.
It was great. It was something that was unique to that time, although we didn't know it now. And now we know it's unique to that time, but now.
So let's talk about what was the first band you were touring with? It was Stan Kenton, or
no? I had one of the bands that this band leader booked was Tex Beneke and the Modernaires, and so I met the lead trumpet player Sanford Skinner in a job like that, and a Midwestern job in the summer of '63, and then I touched base with him again when I on that trip to the East Coast in '64, because they were working the Royal Box in the top of one of the hotels in New York, and we had gotten along. We talked about trumpet playing a lot during the week that we worked together previously, and he requested me from the leader, Hal Dickinson, to come join the band. So I had an opportunity to join the band this summer '64.
Wow, for a tour?
For a tour, European tour.
Wow. Yeah. Had you ever been out of the country, or was that a big deal for you at the time?
Sure, it was a big deal. Yeah, but not. I don't think I had been out of the. No, I hadn't been out of the country. I don't think.
What was that? I mean, anything you had to learn on the road? Was
fantastic. We started off playing some of the basses in West Germany. We stayed in Wiesbaden for a while. Then we went up to Sweden and worked about 3 weeks at the Folkspark circuit up there during early August. Tivoli in Stockholm, Tivoli and Copenhagen. About 3-4 weeks, I think. And then I came back and then I had to go to Berklee in the fall.
So you go back to school. So you're out working, touring, and then back to the classroom again.
Yeah.
And were you playing lead on that, or were you in the section?
No, Sanford was playing. I was a section, fourth. Laroon Holt was playing second.
Oh yeah.
And Phil Shalato.
Yeah.
Was playing. Who's now in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Was playing third solo, such as there were in that book.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fun section.
Yeah.
Yeah, Laroon ended up out here too, I think, eventually.
Oh, yeah. I had met him on when I auditioned for Warren Covington somewhere around my sophomore year, or forget exactly, but he was on that band. Also, there was Hal Espinosa was in that section, who later became president of Local 47.
Yeah, what a smoking section.
Yeah.
So, and you were, you mentioned there's someone else in the band, the trombonist.
Well,
was it Dick?
That was the Warren Covington band, but the Tex Beneke band.
The Tex Beneke band.
Beneke band was Laroon, who I met during that Warren Covington thing, but Dick Shearer.
Yeah.
Dick Shearer, I became great buddies.
Yeah.
We hang out after the concert, and we would wander around the local Swedish towns. And just had a great time.
So is that your connection then?
Then he shows up 3 years later toward the end of my stay at Berklee, and he's playing lead trombone with Stan Kenton's band. And coincidentally, one fellow, Jay Saunders, has to go in the Army and leave the tour that they're on. So Dick said, "Hey, you want to join?"
Wow, and that was a lead trumpet?
This was 2 days after Berklee finished.
Seriously?
Yeah. And Dick wrote, and from the Tex Beneke band, the night before I had to show up at Berklee in '64, Dick drove me to the airport in Omaha.
So
I flew a red eye to Boston.
Well, you got a good 2 days off before you had to go back into the hot seat again. So correct me if I'm wrong. That was for lead trumpet, right? And Jay played.
No,
lead, or was that a section?
It was second.
Oh, okay.
Second. At the time, they had made a stop in Boston about the month before, and that's when I found out Dick was on the band. We exchanged numbers, and then they came back to do a week at Lenny's on the Turnpike, and that was 2 days after I finished at Berklee, and then let's see. So anyway, unfortunately, Jay had the
You got drafted, so
so I joined playing second.
You got the call.
Really, just for the week. It was kind of an audition gig in a sense.
Yeah.
And it worked out well. Stan said, "You want to join us? Finish the tour." And so yeah.
So, we just kind of paint the picture here. I mean, you were familiar with Stan Kenton and his music at the time.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, listen to
this. Yeah, because I had going previously that year that when I was in high school, I was able to hear Stan's band 3 times that summer.
Jeez. Yeah. So you knew the music, knew some of the guys in the band.
I knew something about it. Yeah.
So what was that like? Just jumping in? I mean, did you get the music ahead of time? Did you get a rehearsal, or was it just sink or swim kind of thing?
Well, it was kind of a mixture of both.
Yeah.
But of course, I got the music, and especially when I figured I was going to be there, and so I took the book with me to the hotel and just studied it. The second book.
Start shedding it.
But Dalton had played earlier, and he had to go back to Los Angeles, and so Larry Ford was playing lead at the time I joined, and then Larry had to go into the service too later on.
Jeez.
So Dalton when we got back to L.A., Dalton was playing lead.
Mhm.
I met him, Dalton Smith, and but he wasn't going to do the tour. And Dee Barton was writing this great music, which was going to be the jazz compositions of Dee Barton.
Mhm.
So, I was practicing getting my chops back together and everything like that, and I asked Stan if I could play lead during the fall. He said, "Yeah, I play." It worked out good.
Step in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Wow. Would you mind? I mean, how well did you know Dalton? Did you have much time with him? Because he's one of those guys that was a legend out here in L.A., but not a whole lot of folks know about him.
I met him, got to know him during the summertime a little bit, but he was like at the point, he getting into the studios, and he was trying to nurture that that involvement in LA studio life, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to leave town. He was at the point where a trip out of town would cost him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that created a great opportunity.
Great opportunity.
Yeah.
So then you're in the hot seat. What was that like? Anything you had to learn on the road now that you're having to play lead and have that pressure? Or?
Well, I knew that, sometimes what happens that they have the guy in part of the band,
mm-hmm.
and somebody could do the tour, and then they would bring in the other more experienced guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me that could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I started, as soon as we got on the road, I started having section rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
We had an hour between, or some time where we get to a hotel. I rehearsed the trumpet section.
Wow.
And consistently, unforgivingly. And we became very good as a result of our work. And it reached a point when we were playing Dee's music that I can't remember how it happened, but that Dee wanted me to play lead on the date when we got back.
On the album?
Yeah.
Wow. What an honor.
Yes.
Yeah. But it shows the work that put in.
Yeah,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of big bands, especially touring big bands, didn't rehearse unless they had to, right?
Well,
kind of thing, unless the boss said, "Hey, you need to work on this," or
No.
I don't think that was a common thing.
No,
right?
no. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Who's in the section with you?
Jim Karchner played second.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Leach played third. He was one of Herb Patnow's students.
Mm-hmm.
He was young, about 19. Carl Leach, John Madrid played fourth. They found out about him from the Junior Neophonic. He was like 18 or 19 when he joined the band.
Jeez.
And Jay DeVersa was a jazz trumpet player.
What? Yeah. Man. Well, it also makes sense. Those guys are all monster players.
So
what fun! What a fun section.
Yeah, it was good. We rehearsed
a
lot, and while marking the release points and this and that. So it became we got it together very strong. We got it together too well, in fact, because they had slated 3 sessions for Capitol Records. We got it done in 2.
There you go. The overachieving trumpet section.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a fun section. So, if you don't mind me asking, like Johnny Madrid, did he have that kind of range at that young of age? No, really? That was something that came later?
Yes.
So he was just a section player, and
No, but he was young, and he was 18, 19.
Yeah.
And at that point in his life.
And just
Yeah.
Wow.
So
any Kenton stories? Did you have much interaction with him or any of the other guys in the band?
Well, I guess, as you saw in one of those pictures, we went out and got Nehru jackets and beads, and Stan called us the Trumpets from Hell. And we showed up when, well, actually, that's a kind of funny story. We were in Chicago, and somebody in the section saw this, and so I said, "Hey, let's go down and we'll all get a bunch of this stuff and we'll put them on for the gig tonight." And we were playing in one of the suburbs out of town, just about 30 miles out of town, so out of Chicago. And so we took the bus down there, and Dick Shearer, it was about like 10, 15 minutes before the hit. And we're all been warming up. We didn't really do sound checks in those days. It was a kind of a bowling alley or a school concert, I forget, something like that. And at any rate, so we trumpet section lays back, stays in the bus, and it's about 5 minutes before we're supposed to play, and so no trumpets on the bandstand, and so Dick Shearer's the manager. He comes out and runs up to the bus, and he catches us putting these Nehru jackets on. And he went, like he threw up his hands and went back to the bandstand. And he probably said the same. They'll be here in a minute.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah,
so we had a fanfare.
Yeah.
And like there was a back door to the stage by where the bus was, and so we had a little fanfare that was part of one of the pieces that we were working. So we stood outside and we played this fanfare, off stage, so to speak, and then we went inside and.
Oh man,
it was kind of silly, kind of fun.
But life on the road's hard. Sometimes you have to do things like that.
Oh yeah.
Keep the spirit going. Yeah. So tell me, how did you end up then on Buddy Rich's band? How did that transition work?
Well, at the time, during the '68, we didn't do a fall tour. And because of Stan was doing a documentary about the band, and it was called Bound to Be Heard, and all the concentration was on that. But in the meantime, the players like Joe Randazzo and myself and some of the other players, we are in L.A. having nothing to do, and I'm scouting around and finding I had found some gigs at the $1 Million Theater with Jerry Gallio's band, and so found some work, but it wasn't band. We had some occasional work, and we had some clinics during the summer of '68. We had Redlands and just Redlands. Previous summer we went up to San Jose too, in '67, but. That didn't happen. So we had to figure out something. Now, of course, I knew a lot of the guys at Berklee, like such as Pat LaBarbera, tenor player, and Joe Kalo, who was a baritone sax player, and Sal Marquez was actually from North Texas. And he was on Buddy's band. But however, the other lead trumpet player, another guy, Lynn Biviano, was playing lead with Buddy at the time. But he was having some chop difficulties, and he wanted to take off. So he took off for 3 weeks in the spring of '69, and so he gave me 2 gigs at Basin Street and Izzy's up in Vancouver. We played there, so that was happening, and he figured 3 weeks would be enough for him to recover, and so I went and did those 3 weeks. My first gig with Buddy was a recording session in Western. We were working on Buddy and Soul.
Wow.
Yeah. That's when I joined the band. Actually, my trumpet had got there earlier because there was a session for them in January of '69, and Nat Pavone was on the band. He borrowed my trumpet.
So it got there ahead of time, and then
so he borrowed my trumpet,
Wow.
And I went to the session. I picked it up right afterwards.
I was gonna say, like, everyone's got a Buddy Rich story. So that was your first time meeting Buddy and being on the band was literally in the studio. I mean, was there any kind of rehearsal or anything, or just?
I forget.
I
forget.
But even then, you're just in the band,
like,
and
it was a rehearsal. I forget. Yeah, I think. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was the music for Buddy and Soul that they're working on, and we didn't actually finish that until June at the Whiskey A Go-Go's. It turned out to be a live album there, and let's see. So
yeah. So you were on Buddy's band for a while,
and then they went back to the Midwest. Lynn came back, but it was a recurring thing. And when I got a call one morning, please come to Chicago today. And so I went, and I negotiated with the manager. And so I went and got on the plane. The manager called me at like 8 in the morning.
So what was it as a lead player too? Like, what was that like? To just get dropped in a band and have to play a gig, and it's not like Buddy Rich was a slouch and let his trumpet section do whatever they wanted. I mean,
no, of course not.
So what was that like for you?
Well, it was like humbly speaking, it was like what I was doing in those days.
Okay,
this is what I did.
Yeah,
because I had lots of training with sight reading in the Chicago bands, and so that's what we did.
You got in and do the job.
This is what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. And then that section, probably that was the late 60s. That was probably a smoking section too.
The section when I joined was second was Gerald Eaton, who was one of my good friends from Berklee. There's several guys from Berklee, Rick Stepton, and let's see. Well, there's some East Coast guys, Dave Lom on piano, and Richie Cole was in the sax section, and Pat, Richie Cole, Joe Romano was playing lead, and then Don Englert, who's a LA guy, and Joe Calo, Don Switzer, Vince Diaz was playing lead trombone then, and then Rick was playing second. He later moved over to play lead. Then trumpet section was Sal and my friend Sal Marquez, Daryl Eaton, and Bob Yance. It was a Midwestern guy from Ohio State.
Yeah. Well, that's just, and it seems like during those big band, the 60s and 70s, it was either Berkeley, North Texas, or Indiana, right? I mean, those seemed like...
Days,
But, so, I mean, Buddy, did you have much interaction with Buddy? Did he get along with you?
Yes,
you get along with him?
Got along. Yeah. I've had my share of interactions of all kinds, but we basically, I liked him. I did get along with him.
And when we had Charlie Davis on, he said having Buddy as a lead trumpet player, he was so solid.
Oh,
there was never any question when you needed to come in, kind of thing. So is that...
It was like, it really helped solidify for conceptually what I was trying to do. I mean, to play with a drummer like that, like Buddy, and just there's a direct relationship of the lead trumpet player and drums, it has to be like this. And it has to be one of the greatest, most important musical experiences of my life. Really.
So let's talk chop wise. So what were you doing? A routine or something to keep your lead chops, or your just chops in shape, so that you're as ready to go when the phone rang? Or
basic stuff. Vince Cichowicz, page 1.
So like flow studies and stuff, and
the long tones, the long breathing. The breathing is just so important. I mean, breathing is everything. Breathing's concept is number one, and so that enables you to develop the embouchure, musculature of the embouchure.
Because that's interesting. Because a lot of people think about the strength in the embouchure and stuff like that, but for you that starts with the breathing?
Yes.
How so? What is that?
Well, it just to relax breathing. The simple thing is if you keep things relaxed here, and
Start
because if it gives just things get tense here, it affects the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gets a weird, well, it's a high cut, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You're limiting your high frequencies. You're the very high ones.
Yeah.
And so you lose brilliance. And so you can tell from the sound, and you want to be able to get that sigh effect and so you can get brilliance in a low C.
Mm-hmm.
And you maintain that register just by doing the exercises up and up and up, and you stop when it's time to stop. And then you go back to begin, do everything else, and then you go back there the next day, and goes like that.
Interesting. Now, did that develop out of the Cichowicz Chicago stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it applies to lead playing.
I've never let it go. I still do it.
It applies just as much to lead playing as it does to the orchestral world. So even when you start getting into the stratosphere, it all starts with that low sigh kind of breath. Yeah,
but of course, like at some point, like let's say you're around a B flat above the staff, it starts. You need a little coaxing of the air. Almost, you need propel the air more. And but you don't like play that way in the middle register.
Yeah, no tension, no tension. So you were pretty religious with your routine then. So you had it didn't matter if you're on the road or off the road, you'd get up and you'd go through the fundamentals.
Well, of course, during times of extreme travel, and it was hard to do that. But basically, you try to establish that home base in the warm up.
Yeah.
When you're playing.
Yeah.
And then try to make sure to do some playing on the day off too.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. I'm glad we covered that. I want to take a lot of time talking about Kenton and Buddy Rich because you have a long career. I know these are just a few years at the beginning, but I want to get this information for those because guys that aren't around anymore.
I was there with Buddy in the '69 and '70, and the great thing about that, Buddy was just 53, 52 and 53, so he was still energetic, and very strong. So it was a great time to be playing with him.
Yeah, what fun! So you ended up you had been in L.A. You settled in L.A. right? Yeah. After touring, did you do any other road bands, or did you basically based out of L.A. after that?
Well, I had played with in '68. I had played with Harry James' band 1 month. It was right before Stan Kenton touring, and in the spring of '68, and that was around the Midwest. And then I flew to join Stan's band.
What was it? Did you get to meet Harry? Obviously, Did you talk trumpet with him at all, or any insight into what made him Harry James?
Well, there really wasn't. Harry was a little bit private, so to say, in terms of conversation. When I was leaving the band, I got a chance to talk to him a little bit. I was only there 3 weeks. It was just to fill in on Midwestern tour. Tony Scodwell was playing lead, and Joe Riggs was playing lead alto. Sonny Payne was playing drums. That was interesting. And I forget some of the other players. I wasn't there pretty short time.
Yeah. So what did you talk to Harry about? Anything you can share about?
Nothing specifically about chops or anything.
Not about buzzing the mouthpiece or anything. Us trumpet geeks would love to hear. What's the secret to a sound?
What is it? Well, maybe it was a Parduba double cup. I don't know.
Hey,
but I don't know. I didn't talk to him about that. But I saw the mouthpiece, and all I thought is, how could you play that thing?
Yeah. And
I've tried to play that. My mouthpiece wise, I've always played on the bigger side, through 3C mostly in college, and later on I went to Giardinelli, which is it was a little different shape of a cup, but the rim was very similar to approximately 3C, a little more bite, and but a 25 throat, which I couldn't do today.
Yeah.
But it worked well on my bench, which I had at the time. It got a big sound.
Big sound, and you had the efficiency to be able to do what you needed to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was it was a good piece for them. Yeah.
So I want to spend some time. Your longest tenure was with the Toshiko Akiyoshi
Yes.
Lew Tabackin Big Band.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, during my time at Berklee, Toshiko was well known because he had been there, and I overheard the faculty people always talking about her when her name would come up frequently. You know, doing this, doing that, and I didn't know anything about her at the time, but I knew she was somebody who they respected a lot.
Yeah.
And as a writer and a player too. So after that, I hadn't heard much about her. But in 1972, this is after I left Buddy's Band, I was in L.A. trying to get established. The Tonight Show band moved from New York to Los Angeles, which included Lew Tabackin. And so they were married at the time. They came to Los Angeles, and Lew started working at Burbank NBC. And one day they discovered that we could rent rehearsal rooms at the Union for 50 cents.
Oh man!
And it went up to $1 a little later on. And what was happening is I heard that there's a rehearsal band starting, and I had met Lew on a couple of casuals. He'd done a couple other things, and I had met him. And then I heard that the band was this is the fall of '72, and I heard that they were going to start to rehearse, and so I called up Lew and said, "Hey, I'd like to come play with the band. There's an opportunity. Please let me know." So one day he did call, and I made a rehearsal. It was on 4th, so it's okay,
Yeah.
And so after the rehearsal, I said to Lew, you don't have to worry about this chair anymore. I'll come all the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And so, and you were there with them 10 years and a number of albums and tours and stuff.
Yeah.
What was any fond memories with them from the tours or from the recording? Anything particularly?
Well, it was prolific because Toshiko was always writing, and there was always new music to be played, and she was very meticulous in her rehearsals, and the whole thing was fun. I liked her writing a lot because it reflected many of the things that I had learned at Berklee about her Pomeroy's line writing and the harmonica concepts of somebody like of various of the teachers.
From Berklee.
Yeah, and it was a much different concept than a lot of the bands where you're hearing like block writing of harmonic structure and things like that. So it was so all the parts were challenging.
Yeah.
Especially the fourth part is actually I use the third finger so much,
Yeah.
So
pushing the envelope a little bit more in terms of what a big band can do.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Harmonically speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the Japanese influence, and especially in pieces like Kogen, where the drummers from the No Play were brought in, and actually when we went to Japan the first time, our first concert included those players live.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was the whole situation was exciting, and she was so well respected. We first trip to Japan in '76. They laid out the red carpet for us big time.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm sure the section changed through the years, but did you have a kind of a?
Well, the beginning section was. It settled down after a while. It was Shu and Rich Cooper, Steve Hostetter, and myself. And later on, Rich Cooper left and Larry Ford replaced him. And in '79, Shu, along with some other players in the band, left. It was a change of personnel. Buddy Childers came in to play lead.
Yeah.
and Larry and Steve and I were still there.
Yeah. Would you guys get any solo opportunities or
Not
playing
much.
jazz, or was it
Not
mostly
much.
section work?
No.
Yeah.
I had a little like a 1.5, 1 2/3 course of blues. It was 2/3 because the way she had it, there was a band intro for the first 4 bars. I was supposed to pick up a solo and then finish another one, and that was
Yeah. You got
that's
your
okay.
time.
That's okay. I was there. I was enjoying the music.
So, I mean, through all this time when you're playing lead, you're playing section, were you still working on your jazz playing? Were you still developing that?
Yeah, working on actually, yes.
Uh-huh.
And I had started another band in a jazz rock band in '76. I was as many of us were intrigued with the whole rock perspective, and I was attracted to some of the rock bands who used improvisation a lot, such as the Allman Brothers when Dwayne Allman was alive. I got to hear his band in New York at the Fillmore East, 1971. I was doing a tour with the Beach Boys. That was like a kind of a departure. You know, it was the scene was interesting.
Yeah.
But at any rate, and the Grateful Dead was the other band I was interested in. And I should include this because I just found out something. I met Jerry Garcia, and I told him I admired the improvisation aspect of the band and so forth, and he gave me his phone number, and I got invited to sit in with not the Dead, but another band, Merle Saunders with Jerry Garcia. They were doing some stuff. I sat in with them at the Ash Grove, and then later on, the lion's share. This is July 5th, 1973. Now, the reason I bring up that date is because, unbeknownst to me, it was being recorded.
Really?
Yeah. So it turns out that among the Grateful Dead world, I'm the mystery trumpet player.
On that gig?
On that gig. And so one guy, a researcher, finally found me, and I said, yeah, that was me. I did one of the things at the Great American Music Hall in 74. And so now I can say I play with Jerry Garcia.
You're on a bootleg with Jerry Garcia. Do you have that? Do you have
yes,
the album?
When I found out, I called their office. It's a little more, it's kind of out of the reaches of bootleg.
Okay.
But it
was an actual professional recording.
It was actual recording that they made because they recorded everything they did.
Yeah.
And they're just the people who are researching are piecing their way through all the stuff that he did, and so it was released July 5th, 1973 at the Lion's Share. And we have this long. I just got it recently. And we did this long improvisation that went on for about 15, 20 minutes nonstop.
What
it's
fun!
Like, just developed and developed.
Oh man, I'd love to hear that if you have it.
I have it.
Okay, well, maybe we can play a clip of it if we have the technology to do that.
I can get it to you.
So we've solved one mystery in the Grateful Dead Jerry Garcia history.
Right, exactly. And I was flabbergasted. What you found that it was part of the record now? So
how cool!
Yeah,
how cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to get to, because this has been a great conversation so far. You picked up and moved to Japan.
Well, it wasn't quite picked up and moved to Japan.
Okay.
The way it worked, of course, I really liked Japan. I got into it for the first trip. I bought a conversation book, and it was so fascinating to me because it was totally Asian culture, big jazz fans. How does that happen? Well, a lot of it was a result of the occupation, the historical. So, but at any rate, it was a fascinating point to me. So I started studying Japanese in between Toshiko's trips. And so between 73 and 83, we made about 7 trips to Japan. So so when they decided to move to New York in 1983.
Mm-hmm.
That was the end of the Japanese trips.
Yeah.
I mean, she invited everyone in the band. Well, if you want to come to New York, you can come to New York. And only two guys took up Joey Barron, who at least had the trio work at the time. Toshiko's trio and Lew's trio.
Mm-hmm.
And one other guy went, a trombonist, and it was hard for him, I think, because he ended up had to do a lot of other things. So at any rate, I wanted to go back to Japan. I didn't like the idea of not going to Japan anymore. So I found out about this artist exchange program through the National Endowment. It's in connection with the U.S.-Japan Friendship Commission. The artists, 5 artists a year go either way, and it's from all the art forms,
mm-hmm.
visual arts, literature, etc. And so I started applying for it, and I didn't get it right away because the first application didn't go anywhere. Second application, following year, was better, and I got into the finals. At least I found out later on, and then the third year, I applied every year. Third year, I was able to get it. I was building my portfolio,
mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And each application got stronger. And it was consistent. They say, I guess he wants to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got the grant in 88 and went there in 89, March of 89. And that was for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to talk the consulate to give me a year visa. Somehow. I left it out. And the guy asked me, "How long are you going to stay? A year?"
Why not? Never hurts to ask, right?
Yeah. So, which was important because 6 months goes by quickly,
mm-hmm.
and by a year I was able to be network enough that I could start doing some things,
mm-hmm.
and I was able to join the Sharps Flats Big Band.
Mm-hmm.
I started subbing for them in 90, and I did a couple of projects during my grant period. Ghost stories in Japan,
mm-hmm.
which some were documented by this writer from the late 1800s, Lafcadio Hearn,
mm-hmm.
and all of his books are kind of a treasure of like an introduction of Japanese culture to foreigners, to the English-speaking world,
mm-hmm.
so to speak. And so I put together this concert of music, jazz music, to ghost stories, Japanese ghost stories. And it turned out to be pretty interesting, because I used shakuhachi,
uh-huh.
The Japanese flute,
it's like the flute, yeah,
and the kotsusumi, which is one of the drums from the no play, and biwa, which is normally was the instrument from narration, like the wandering minstrel.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And
the strings, yeah.
So I studied these instruments, figured out how to really put together a concert,
integrate those into jazz,
and bring it all together, and we did that. And I did a couple gigs, but I started to meet resistance. There was a little bit of resistance from the jazz side, mm-hmm. not the traditional instrument. You think the traditional Japanese music world, they call it hogaku,
mm-hmm.
Would be resistant, but they're not. They want input of new things. They want to freshen it up. They want some other influences coming into it to help.
Yeah.
They have the tradition, the history, which they always play.
Mm-hmm.
But in this is probably more like 1989, 1990, that period of time,
mm-hmm.
that there was more resistance from the jazz side of things, because it was making it less pure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it kind of caused me to hesitate along that road, and
mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I wish I'd been able to stick with it a little bit longer. But then the Sharps and Flats opportunity came along, and some players, I have to say that that other jazz bands have used traditional instruments in the past, but not a consistent thing.
Yeah.
The Sharps and Flats had recorded with Hozan Yamamoto, I think his name is, star shakuhachi player, and so it's been there. And there's even one famous Gagaku piece that the Sharps or one of the other bands, maybe Norio Maeda or I think maybe the Sharps used at one point but their main thing is the jazz thing.
Straight ahead,
straight ahead jazz.
Yeah.
Swing.
So what was it playing with the Sharps and Flats? Did you guys tour around Japan or
all over the place?
All the time, recording?
All the places I missed with Toshiko's band, I got to go with the Sharps and Flats.
Yeah. Oh, what fun!
Someone
who loves Japan, I could go.
Okinawa, just North Japan, Southern Japan.
And you ended up staying there a number of years, right?
25.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
one thing led to another, and daughter was born in 1993 by ex-wife number 2, and so I wanted to stay there for that. I wanted to be a presence in my daughter's life, and that was if I had to come back before. There were obviously there were difficulties. So I don't want to get into that.
We can just save that for another podcast.
Save that for a bottle of scotch.
So, but I mean, making a career as a musician in Japan, was it any different necessarily than here in LA or when you were in Boston? I mean, is it just still networking and getting gigs and things like that?
Well, yes. It's Japan is interesting in many respects. I mean, I was there as a grant recipient for at least considered for a year, and that was part of my introduction while I was there. And but once I had gotten off the cultural visa, I could work. So, because I had a sponsor, for Bingo Miki. Who's a band leader in his own right, composer, and also an ex-Berklee guy. So,
yes, those connections.
Well, I met him much after he was at Berklee, because I met him on one of the trips to Japan, and we had played. Bruce Fowler and I had played in his band one of the last trips to Japan too. So we just stayed after the tour.
Yeah, then he was able to sponsor you
to do a gig with him.
Yeah,
and so I worked with him as kind of a cultural consultant, in terms of America and so forth, and that worked out well, and but. The music business is quite a bit different. Everything is, in the terms of like groups, it's pretty much siloed. The lateral communication among musicians is much weaker.
Really?
Than here.
Interesting.
They know about each other.
Yeah.
But as far as like hanging out and things like that. Some hanging out, but it's just different.
So everyone's in their own lane, basically. So if you do one thing,
stays their own lane.
Yeah, if you do this thing, that's all you do. You don't interact with people.
I mean, one band, we were one time. Well, this is an odd representation, and this happened later on after I'd been there a while. We were touring with one band, so we did a concert. Everybody comes back to the hotel, and Sharps members are just kind of dispersed, And so I was walking out of the hotel down the street, and the other one of the other bands was like, and they all know me, because I've been in the Sharps Flats for a number of years.
Yeah,
I was in some place, izakaya place, beer and snacks.
Yeah.
And I went in, I could hang out with these guys, And they said, "Well, this is our band."
It's almost like a competition, like you're the opposing team or something.
Well, not.
Or is it?
No, it's not that.
Oh, it wasn't that. It was
It's
just
not. I mean, not in that group,
interesting.
but inflexibly so.
Interesting.
So and we did these concerts. Well, there were ongoing concert series. One of them downtown Tokyo was Hibiya Kokaido. It's the name of a concert hall, and there were 4 bands.
Mm-hmm.
I would sometimes get there early, hear a couple of the other bands, and say hello to the guys I know, but like some of the early bands, they never hung out to hear the other bands. Almost never. After the last note, they're gone.
One and done. Yeah.
And it's always like made me scratch my head,
Yeah, just different.
It's just a different way of looking at it. And so I just pretty much decided to do my own thing. And later on, I formed my quintet, started in '93, and then I started my big band in '99, the anniversary of Duke Ellington's birth. And we did Such Sweet Thunder. I got the hold of the music. I had been gathering some big band music, and I started my big band then in Japan.
So you jumped from being in the section to leading your own group.
Yeah.
What was that like? Anything you had to learn about now being the head honcho?
I just followed the examples of, but I try to do it better.
learn what not to do, and then also learn what to do.
Yeah.
And then you made a CD, right?
With my quintet.
Mm-hmm. In Tokyo, Japan.
Yeah.
With a nice Reeves mouthpiece on the cover. Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell us about this.
Original music.
So all Japanese musicians other than yourself. And how did you choose the tunes? And I mean, are they originals or
all originals?
Wow.
Yeah. All I wasn't going to. I was looking for some representation of the quintet that we had done. Something we had Motion Blue, which is one of the offshoot groups of the Blue Note venues. We had a good sound recording from there, and hey, this is good enough to release as a CD. And so I talked to the Japanese band members, and they all wanted $2,000 for me to each to release it. So I'm not going to spend that kind of money on somebody else's music.
Yeah,
we had done one the Ginza, Wayne Shorter, and like a bunch of other things to Joshua. And I'm not going to pay royalties.
Yeah.
So and if I have to pay them, I had to pay. I had to raise a bunch of money to do that. Mm-hmm. But it turned out good.
What fun! Fun!
Yeah.
So I mean, I know when you do a CD, it's like every tune is like a baby. But is there any particular tracks on there that you're particularly proud of, or?
Well, it's pretty hard for me not to identify them as all important to me in some respect.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them were like one called "Two Birds of Passage" were actually composed. There were a couple of things were composed in the mid '80s when I was doing my grant applications. I formed after my jazz rock band. Jazz rock band was active between 1976 to 1983, and after that I reformed and did a jazz septet, and I did a bunch of writing for that, and we'd played at the Come Back In Venice, and they're part of my grant applications for later on. And so, but I liked them, and I wanted to record them, so I included them on this. And then there was others which are recent. One tune dates back to 1970, Urgency, the theme. I wanted to get it in.
So kind of a amalgamation of your life's work, so to speak, through different eras and things.
I don't know when the next time I could gather that much money.
Well, what fun.
That again, yeah.
Well, yeah, we've covered so much. Well, one thing I want to touch on before we wrap up here, because you had mentioned, and you're also the material you gave me, is that the importance of education. And I mean, all throughout this, you've been giving back in forms of, well, I mean, you did the grant work over in Japan, but also teaching and educating. So first of all, why is that? What does that mean to you? And
well,
we'll start with that.
It of course it means more to me now, and even recently so in the last several decades.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time that I was getting the music ed degree, it didn't mean a lot. And so, but it was encouraged
Mm-hmm.
to get the education degree, and I'm sure glad I did.
Mm-hmm.
It opens up, well, especially during the last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
with the leanness of the music business during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came back from Japan, I knew I had to do something. I knew it would be quite the same, as because the times have changed,
Mm-hmm.
number one, and the age I am, in trying to reinsert myself among a whole bunch of new younger players, and
Mm-hmm.
they were playing great too, And so, I had established my credential before I went to Japan, because when I went to Japan initially in '89, I thought it was only going to be there 6 months to a year and a half at the most.
Yeah.
And how it developed was
Turned into 25, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big surprise. And I got to be, and that's so important. But the point is that I renewed my credential again
Mm-hmm.
after I got back in 2017 and 2018. By spring of it, it took a long time. There's so many hoops to jump through
Right.
these days. It was much easier before.
Yeah.
But so I got it renewed, and I started sub-teaching in the spring of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I got to do so much in Japan, especially in terms of my big band, which we hadn't mentioned, is in '99, the following year, I was able to rent the music from Porgy Bess, Gil Evans music,
Yeah.
and I performed that in Japan with a big band. Tom Pearson was a conductor.
Oh, what fun. Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention, because I know you've done, I mean, I'm sure you did more in Japan, but I know you also, your orchestra or your big band did some work out here, Ken Poston's big band weekends and stuff, right?
I was able to do that one in 2017.
Yeah.
When that was, I hadn't done it since, but I was able to participate in the last spring's Kenton reunion.
Oh, what fun!
Yeah, that was fun. But in terms of being able to do things, Japan presented unique opportunities
Mm-hmm.
in that respect. So later on, I did the famous Ellington suites, the Such Sweet Thunder, Far East Suite, and selections from New Orleans Suite, and just a mixture. I had a lot of music coming through there. Then in the Gil Evans section, I was able to perform Arduinez from Sketches of Spain with a band formed from students from Gaydai and another semi-professional. It was a combination band.
Wow!
But the concert was sponsored by the Tokyo University of the Arts. Gaydai is called.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I got to hold the music from Miles Ahead from Miles Evans, rented it.
Wow.
And,
So you got to
perform
recreate
Miles
that.
Ahead. Yeah. So I was just to be able to do those three significant stepping stones of Miles' career. It was fantastic.
What fun!
Yeah.
What fun!
Yeah.
And great for the folks over there that, other than hearing the albums, don't get exposed to that as much.
Yeah.
So, any projects in the works now, or are you?
Well, I wish.
Not at the moment.
None right now. Just to maintain.
Yeah.
And the move coming back was a little bit costly.
Yeah.
And I'm paying on that, and I'm working and getting that done.
And then also you get back here, and then COVID hits, and then everything shut down for a year and a half.
Exactly.
So well, hopefully another big band will.
Well, yeah, or
pick
the
up
quintet, but I'm.
Yeah.
Well, I need the kind of a venue I can play at once a week.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and then that's the thing. To me, my trips to Japan, I noticed, out here in LA, for as big as LA is, there's not a lot of regular places you can just have your group play. Whereas in Japan, you can go around the corner and there's some jazz club or cafe or bar or something, and so there's much more opportunities there. So, well, hopefully something will come around pretty soon. Yeah, if they do, you let us know.
So. Well, at any rate, I am still working on doing writing and working on conceptual things in my practice and.
Awesome.
And
and how can folks find out website? Best way to
learn what's going on? The website is down for the moment.
Okay.
But I'm going to have to reconstitute that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have that when you get it going. Yep. And then I can't believe we've already gone. Well, we're almost an hour and a half now. But I will be remiss if I don't ask you about your equipment. You did mention you played on a little larger mouthpiece and used a Benge at some point. So what are you using now?
Oh, I'm using Bob Reeves, one that basically Bob designed. It was like adjustments of different things, adjustment of the rim size, and it's pretty close to a 42.
Okay.
And 42.
And you still using a Benge now, or do you have
No, I'm playing a Bach.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you've been using that.
Yeah.
And flugelhorn.
Most of the time. Yamaha I got from Yamaha and 1975, gold brass was. I really love it. I haven't found another flugelhorn that I like better.
Those are workhorses, great horns. Yeah. Now that I'd ask you about the equipment, now we can wrap up. Absolute honor to have you on, Mike. One last question for you. If you could leave our listeners with your best piece of advice, and this could be, it doesn't have to be music related. It can be, totally up to you. What would your best piece of advice be?
For trumpet players?
Anyone. Well, we got mostly, there's a few trombone players that listen and maybe one horn player, but, for a musical audience, what would you advise?
Practice. And to have your eyes and ears open to all forms of the arts, especially, because we can learn so much from them. Visual arts, literature, and it lead you in other directions, unpredictable directions that you haven't thought of before. Sometimes if we get too involved with the mechanical aspect or technical aspect, we could miss some other things. And so sometimes the other arts are a guide to some of those aspects, and we can find something which can apply to the music aesthetically. Aesthetics.
Yeah, it's all around us.
Yeah, and so be open and receptive to that. One of the most important things for me has been to keep myself receptive from other art forms. When I was at Northwestern, I took a course in art history as an elective, and it so much opened up things for me. I didn't know anything about it before, and but it began a new interest area where I'm in the audience, and I could appreciate the input from another direction. You can do it as well as in literature. It's opening up to the aesthetics of other art forms, which you could bring back and put in your own musical art form through practice and exercise are technical, but sometimes we have to apply something else. That feeling from another. We get input from various sources, and for me, it was in Japan. Japanese literary aesthetics are really fascinating, and new input from other sources.
Ideas are all around us, right?
Yes.
It's just, wonderful.
And
absolute honor to have you on today, Mike. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, now that we're into the second 100 of episodes of The Other Side of the Bell, it gets to the point where, I feel bad that I haven't had a number of these guests on earlier, but better late than never. And it was such an honor to have Mike Price come in and share so many great stories. I mean, like I said, he's on a musical journey literally all over the world, touring in Europe in his, youth with Tex Beneke and Buddy Rich and Stan Kenton. So many great road stories, but then also all the stuff he does himself, from his quintet to the Mike Price Jazz Orchestra, the album, which we played a little clip on, and it is studying with classical players. I mean, that's what I love. Like, everyone's on their own journey, and it was great to have Mike in here to share all of that advice and great stories. So again, his website, MikePriceJazz.com. He said he was still getting his website back up, so it may not be there when you listen to this episode, but you can keep track of him. But also check out his CD in Tokyo, Japan. We'll have links to where you can get that in the show notes and in the description to this podcast. Thank you again for listening. We have several thousand people listen every month, and not to play the guilt card. However, we only have a few hundred reviews, if even that, which means most of you listening have never clicked that 5-star review or left us some feedback. And like I said, every time you hit that, the algorithms work in our favor and help us be more visible to the brass players out there that don't know of the other side of the bell. So if you could leave us that 5-star review, it really means a lot to us and helps us remain visible. All right, we have a lot of great guests coming up this next month, so hit that subscribe button. And if there's someone you want to hear on this podcast, send an email to john@bobreeves.com, and I will add that name to my master list of artists we reach out to. Until next time, let's go out and make some music.